Sponsored by the Big 98, Nashville's #1 for new country and the home of the Bobby Bones Show.
The Rockin' Review is so thrilled to have back on a friend of the show, master luthier for Taylor Guitars and an incredible musician in his own right, Andy Powers. Andy, thanks for coming back on the show with me.
It's my pleasure. I wish it was in person.
You, my friend, have been very busy with some incredible new models, and you know I've played several of them, including the AD22e, and then also the AD27e, which is a huge departure for Taylor Guitars. We got to talk about this, Andy. You're kind of pushing the envelope for the brand Taylor.
Well, you know, the thing is, as a guitar player, I've always enjoyed that you get to choose your voice. You get to choose what you sound like. And, you know, we're given the singing voice that we're given. You can work on that a little bit, but with a guitar, you get to pick and you can change it, you know? So I've always appreciated being able to pick up a guitar and have it sound one way and then pick up a different sounding guitar and get a different voicing out of that instrument. And so that was something that we're deliberately leaning more into because, you know, the world of guitar playing is very broad. It's very diverse, and it's also a very inclusive environment, right? You can sound like whatever you want to sound like. You can say things in the form of a song that you can't say otherwise. You can make all kinds of interesting music. And so I love to build different sounds and different styles of guitar to complement the different ways that musicians are wanting to approach the instrument.
For these latest guitars, particularly in the American Dream series, you've been pulling in a lot of input from Nashville and Los Angeles musicians. Now when I'm playing some of these newer guitars that you've designed, you know, such as the AD27e, to where I kind of expect that same V-class sound, which was very even, very pristine, I would say piano-like, but certainly on the 27, you kind of dirtied up the sound some. And so I'm like going, you know, this is not your grandfather's, you know, Taylor guitar here, you know, with this flame.
It's a very different kind of experience. And that was one of the exciting things that was behind the V-Class. You heard us talk about it initially and say, well, this gives us a lot more options because that design can be, you know, pretty easy as far as guitar building goes. It's relatively easy to manipulate it or refine that design and deliberately create different sounds. Right. And so, yeah, of course, the first versions I wanted to build were very high fidelity, very pristine, super linear. And now that we've been enjoying playing those guitars and building them for a while, we have opportunities to create some different kinds of voicings. So like in this case, you know, with that flame top guitar, you're right, it is a dirtier sound. And sometimes that's the most appropriate thing to use. The way that a musician will lay out on it, the way that they'll approach playing that guitar, they'll hit it a different way, they'll even use a different pick. It's a different kind of flavor.
Well, you know, and I think it's so much fun too, once again, talking about the American Dream series of guitars, to where, you know, compared to a lot of the Taylor guitars from over the years, and certainly I like a fancy, nice guitar too, but there's something about, Andy, having what I would call a working man or working woman's guitar that you're not afraid to throw in the backseat and go to a songwriter round or on a camp out or something like that. And maybe it doesn't have all the beautiful inlays or the beautiful wood. And I thought it was interesting too on this AD27 that you use maple for the top, the back, and the sides, which is you know, that's a huge departure for you.
As far as a flat top guitar goes, it's a departure, period. There are very, very few acoustic flat top guitars that have been built with maple tops, typically because it doesn't have the high fidelity sound that we're often looking for out of a flat top acoustic guitar. But in this case, the unique damping factor of a maple top, it fit the character that we wanted to build into that guitar. It fit that sound, that flavor, the look. It just kind of fell together. It was the right thing to do for that sound and to create that voicing. As a guitar maker, an instrument maker, I look at maple and go, well, it's a material that has a unique characteristic. And you can use that to your best advantage in a wide variety of situations. Now, in the case of a more narrowly defined acoustic guitar space, oftentimes a maple flat top guitar, it's one specific flavor. But the reality is, man, you can do all kinds of things with it. You can cook with it. It's just an ingredient to use. There's all kinds of stuff you can do.
Well, speaking of cooking with, one of the things I found interesting in the past year or so that really wowed me that you came out with was your urban guitar series, repurposing wood that was being, trees that were taken down for parks or whatever else in cities and would typically be chipped up and used in somebody's yard or a playground. And you were taking these and you're making guitars out of them, and they're kind of rough hewn. And I kind of, I found that very interesting. What a great way to repurpose wood that was otherwise just thrown away.
It is. It's a super exciting forestry model for us. We've been working with it for a few years now, and having researched it for a number of years before that. But when you'd fly into a city, you look down out of the airplane window and you see green trees all over the place. I mean, even you fly into LA or Nashville or someplace that's like a major metropolis, you look down and you go, man, there's a lot of trees. There's a lot of forest canopy. Those trees were put there for practical reasons, to control soil erosion, for sound abatement, for shade and cooling value, for windbreaks, for all kinds of different aesthetic value, all kinds of reasons. But they do, just like every other living thing, they come to the end of their natural lifespan. And they become, in the case of a tree, they become a liability. It's a hazard if it's next to a road and it gets too big and falls over in a storm or something like that. So typically those trees, they're planted, they're fertilized, they're pruned, they're maintained, and then eventually they're removed. Now, when they're removed, conventionally, the desire for the arborist is to get rid of the material as quickly as possible. So that means chipping it up for mulch.
Right.
So you're taking this high value tree that you put all this work into creating a great saw log, and then you're going to grind it up into the stuff you hope becomes dirt. Like, there's gotta be better usage than that. And so when we started looking into the different species that were available and the way that it could work, we started realizing, man, there's really something here. There's some great instrument quality wood here. So we've been using that in a number of different ways with, in some cases, like the GT Urban Ash guitars. I love the GT design, and we decided to build one version that was using urban wood and kind of treat it in a very approachable, simple way, real Spartan kind of instrument. But in other cases, like our Builder's Edition 324, man, that's like one of the premier guitars that we're putting all of the cool woodworking into it as a real high-end piece. And it's the same basic tone wood, this urban ash, that you can derive a wonderful response, really great sounding guitar from that wood. So it's a project we're excited to work with and see continue moving on into the future.
Well, speaking of which, moving into the future, I got to bring this up. After spending time with the AD27e flame top, I thought, wow, maybe this would be a great design also for a 12-string down the road.
Quite possibly. There's no end to the fun guitars that there are still to build. There's a lot of really neat, exciting things out there. And so it feels like a particularly exciting time to be a guitar maker, especially driving Taylor forward. We have such opportunities to build at a very high level these instruments that can serve the needs of a lot of musicians around the world.
Well, I think that's what you've done so well with the American Dream series, like this guitar and also the AD22e, to where just making them approachable, the price point and everything else, to where people can get into one, as a singer, songwriter, or, musician, whatever, and be able to own an actual, a quality made guitar that they can take anywhere. And that's why with the whole, American Dream series, I enjoy seeing how you and the company continue to push that envelope with it, Andy.
Thank you. I love those guitars. To me, it's got like the character of a cup of black coffee. There's no frills, there's no filigree and ornamentation on this thing. But man, what good, strong character, great flavor. It's going to get the job done. At a time when you need it most, it's there for you.
Well, I think it's incredible, and I can't wait for more people to be able to see them and play them. I know they're going to be rolling out this year, Andy, with the expansion of the American Dream series, which is a great name anyway. But I especially love this AD27e flame top. And I just want to tell you, thank you as always, Andy Powers, for coming on the Rockin' Review and just catching up with us.
Hey, it's my pleasure.
Sponsored by the Big 98, Nashville's #1 for new country and the home of a Bobby Bones Show.